Hello folks, nice to see you. My name's Dustin Cormier and welcome to How to Rock Astrology. Today we're going to be talking about what it's like when you have natal Sun in Cancer with natal Mars in the sign of Pisces. This is a great combination, one of the better, stronger combinations really available generally. If you want to hear a little bit more about what's so great about Mars and Pisces, it is a good placement. I would say it's like tied for 4th or 5th of the Mars placements. Feel free to check out my Mars and Pisces video that I did at the start of this little part of the series. This video is going to be talking about what Mars and Pisces adds to the essential ego of Cancer Sun. So, welcome. This is a great combination, like I said. These two are in signs that are compatible. Every Western and Indian traditions would both agree that Pisces and Cancer are two mutually compatible things. And the Sun and Mars are also mutually, they hold each other in a specific regard. The Indian tradition treats Mars as the right hand of the Sun, the right arm, the general that does the will of the king of the kingdom, which is the Sun. The Sun being your deepest desires, the self that you seek to project despite the resistance of the world. It's the constant self-image that you have the energy within you to project and the potential to project, so long as you have all of the necessary parts of your astrological vessel there to substantiate that Sun energy and all the different layers of life that the other planets represent. Mars is an important one because it's the will. It's how you apply the will, and it's really how you dig yourself into the earth in order to perpetuate the Sun sign, in this case being Cancer. And here, it's not always the case that the Sun, the king, and Mars, the general, understand each other and get along together. Sometimes Mars is in a sign that doesn't complement the Sun. In this particular case, the Sun is in a good place for itself in Cancer, and Mars is in a good place for itself. And these good places happen to work also in tandem with each other. They're in good individual placements, and they're also work well together because they're both water signs. And the Sun and Mars, I would contend, do well both in water signs. The Sun does well in all water signs, and so does Mars. Why that is, I will explain right now. I like to talk about how I'm an what I call a tropical Vedic astrologer. That means that I use Vedic philosophy, and I try to bring Vedic philosophy out through my videos. I essentially interpret charts in the Vedic, ancient, traditional Indian Vedic way. But I use Western measurements. I don't go back 24 degrees or anything that you might have heard from other Vedic astrologers. So I'm bringing this, I use Vedic wisdom to bring different insights into astrology. And I'm going to try to explain it. And this is me kind of baiting you into the Indian tradition. Check it out. I'm going to explain what I'm talking about in one moment. I just got to fix my fan here. It's always a thing with that darn thing. So what I wanted to tell you is, consider this. Have you ever thought about the fact that the planets are kind of split in half into two groups? The Earth and Air sign planets, the planets which rule Earth and Air signs, and then there's the planets which rule Fire and Water signs. You'll notice that there's four that rule, there's three that rule Earth and Air. Venus rules Taurus and Libra, Earth and Air. Mercury rules Virgo and Gemini, Earth and Air. Saturn anciently rules Capricorn and Aquarius. It's the primary ruler of Aquarius. So that's also Earth and Air. Now, these three planets, Venus, Mercury, and Saturn, all get along together, and they all do best in earth and air signs. Now, what about the other side? The other side relates more to ourselves, to what we are, to our enjoyments, and to the self. Not necessarily the way the world is and how relationships are. That's more of those other planets. The planets that relate to the self and my expression into the world is Mars, which rules Aries and Scorpio, fire and water. Jupiter, which rules Sagittarius and Pisces, anciently, fire and water. Jupiter is the primary ruler of Pisces, even though Western astrology considers Neptune to be the ruler of Pisces. For Western as well as Indian traditions, I would consider that no matter what, Jupiter is the primary rulership. And Jupiter holds the energy field of Pisces, not Neptune. Neptune is an attenuation of the of Pisces, but Jupiter is its main holds its chakra pattern, which would be the second chakra. It's something I could explain in another video. So, Mars rules Aries and Scorpio, fire and water. Jupiter rules Sagittarius and Pisces, fire and water. And the Sun rules Leo, fire, and the Moon rules Cancer, water. Those four planets relate to the self. Now, it's funny because Cancer, we don't often associate. Cancer and Pisces, we don't necessarily associate with being about the self because they're receptive, they're empathic, right? They're listening to the other person as the word goes. But as a sign, Cancer as signs themselves, like we could equate certain things with that empathic quality of Cancer and Pisces. But that empathy can be applied in different ways depending on the planet that's inside the sign. Sun and Mars are outgoing planets. So when the Sun or Mars are inside of any sign, it's basically saying how are these planets, how am I expressing myself through Mars and the Sun in their sign. Cancer and Pisces are both these empathic planets, empathic signs rather, because they're water signs. But this empathy is a gateway to understand, to getting through to people. In the case of, Sun and Cancer, there's an empathy to others, but it's in order to perpetuate what your Sun, wants. Cancer is very receptive to other people, but it's you that wants to be empathic and receptive. And you are going to do whatever you can to build a life in which you can enjoy your desire to be receptive and empathic and to nurture people and protect people and to be respected for listening to people. These are all things that Cancer Sun wants to be known as. But it's still a self which is creating its desires through the archetype of Cancer. Same thing with Mars. Mars and Pisces. Even though Pisces is empathic, what's going on here is that you are using Pisces empathy and sensitivity to others in order to manifest that Cancer ego, in order to manifest your desire, which is to be respected as a person who listens, who's receptive, has strength in being empathic and enjoying yourself and others. So, having Cancer Sun with Mars and Pisces, this is a very good thing because they're both in water signs. Both these planets enjoy water signs because Sun and Mars are planets of the self. Just like how we said they both rule either a fire or a water sign, Mars and the Sun. They are for the self. And they are in water signs, which are reflective, and they do well there. Now, not only are they good individually in this placement, but they're also good together because, of course, the Sun in Cancer is trine Mars in Pisces. This is really great because it's true that Cancer can be a soft-hearted person, a soft, sensitive person. And this softness can cause them, because it's still essentially a feminine archetype. Even though it can come off very noble and powerful, Cancer really can be powerful. In fact, when the sun is in the sign of Cancer, that means the person is born during the summer solstice, which is when the sun is at its peak. This makes for an emotionally passionate person. A person with a lot of drive, a lot of ambition, and a lot of juicy energy going towards doing what they want to do. In fact, most Cancers are much more, they're homebodies, that's true, but the reason why they're such homebodies is because they work so much. Their opposite pole is Capricorn, and they go out and they do all their work, and then they come home, and they're like, now I get to finally do what I want to do. But they're hard workers, though, still. They have the capacity to channel their passionate emotional energy to great things, to great efforts and purposes. By being in the sign of the moon, of Cancer, they actually listen well to what their inner desires are, and the sun, being the planet of the self, is in a sign of the self in Cancer, and it does well there. As for Mars and Pisces does well for every sign, no matter what. It's a much better placement than most Western texts would probably make you believe, because Pisces is supposed to be this mute, quiet energy that observes, and most Westerners don't consider that to be a good placement for Mars, because Mars is this outgoing warrior energy. But as a Vedic-minded person, I would invite you to consider the fact that Mars in Pisces is much more outgoing and much more powerful, much more confident than the Western tradition would have you believe. My reasoning for this is essentially that Mars in Pisces is actually ruled by Jupiter. And remember again, Mars is an outgoing planet, so it has to be outgoing, it has to be strong. And it does well in any sign that is ruled by something which allows it to open itself, allows the warrior to get out its knife and start practicing the warrior thing. The highest expression of Mars is in fire or water signs for this reason. Excuse me for mixing up my words there. Mars does best in fire and water signs because then the self is conducting itself from its own preference, from its own place of hot comfort within itself. Now, with the water sign, with Pisces, since it's ruled by Jupiter and Mars are best friends. Because again, this is something Indian astrology needs to perpetuate to Westerners. Mars rules Aries and Scorpio, fire and water signs. Jupiter rules Sagittarius and Pisces, fire and water signs. Jupiter has to do with ourselves, our buoyant, lucky, optimistic expression of what we are in the context of the world. It's what we're good at. It's what we want to do from within ourselves. Like Venus is more about like what we want to do with other people, how we enjoy and nurture our social strata. But Jupiter is really more about like the gritty, the laughter that comes from a belly laugh of the self in one, which is the self in all. So for Mars to be in Pisces, it's in a sign ruled by Jupiter. Now, whereas Mars in Sagittarius, it applies the manifestation of the sun, the king, through its outgoing nature of Sagittarius. Sagittarius knows how it likes to travel, knows where it wants to travel, knows that it likes to buoyantly, despite all other opinions, Mars in Sagittarius goes out for what it wants. When Mars is in Pisces, what happens is that Mars is very aware and pushes, and it manifests a reality which caters to the incoming preference of Mars. Meaning you are not going to hang out with workmates or with a family or with people in your circle who do not optimistically, buoyantly represent the reality that you're trying to create. And the Cancer Sun is also helping to perpetuate this. You could see why these help each other. Mars in Pisces works by its own regard, its own preferences, what makes you comfortable. And you can have this hilariously, the thing about Mars and Pisces is that because it's driven by its incoming preferences, it's unapologetic about sensuality. It's unapologetic about how it likes to work, about the way in which it likes to work, and it's also very sensitive to how others like to work. In fact, it has this universal sense of peace, peaceability, and an intuitive sense of, the path of least resistance between itself and other people. So what happens is that they're very sensitive and intuitive to what they want to create, and they're also sensitive to what others are trying to do in their creation style. This gives Mars and Pisces the capacity to be very sensitive and to work with people in a way that makes others want to work with you, because you're so unapologetic about what you want to do, about what you want to laugh at, about what's funny, about what's kind of cynical, about what's kind of the joke that everybody in your circle would get, that everyone's feeling at the same time. This kind of sensitivity, this kind of enjoyment of the personality of people, the fact that you manifest Cancer's desires through your sensitivity to other people, and you even use other people's motives in order to get what you want. Now, this is all well and good. I mean, especially as long as your Venus, if you have a good Venus and a good moon, which are more feminine, receptive planets relating to relationships, especially the moon, because you're a Cancer Sun, and the Cancer Sun channels itself through the moon here. Your moon and your Venus are really going to show, depending on if they're good, if they're well placed, if they have positive aspects, if they're not afflicted. They will show whether you put value in having a good relationship and being loved by the people that you work with. This is part of what I'm trying to say in these videos, is that this is a Mars and Sun reading, which means just because you have the Sun in Cancer and Mars in Pisces does not mean you're going to be an empathic person. It just means that you are going to know how to apply yourself socially and in conversation in a receptive way in order to get what you want. And if you're a Cancer Sun, you want to be respected for kind of helping people, or just if you want to be respected at all, then you will be someone who's respected for how you work with people and your ability to so unapologetically say what you want to do, and to also ask other people what they want to do in the group. And then they read that you're just going to be unapologetic about it. Well, I understand that you want to do this, but we need to do this as a group because we only have these many resources. But I've heard that you want to do your thing, and I'm going to remember it. And then, you will do that for people. You'll remember what they wanted to do in the group, and, you'll remember all the little things that they want to do in order that you can help them finally realize that thing. They'll remember what you did for them, and then they'll help you manifest your thing. And all of this, you might not actually care about any of these people. If you don't have a good moon, and if you don't have a well-placed Venus, you could be doing all this just to manipulate the world in order to affect your will upon the world. And it will still be good. You might not even break that many hearts just by being a robot. My point here is to say that, you're going to read a lot of things about Cancer Sun, about how they're weak and that they can have good relationship capacity. And that is true to a certain degree. A relationship is important to you as a Cancer Sun, because that's how you manifest your inner, deepest self that you wish to project upon the world. You want to be seen as having a good wife. But it's up to your moon and your Venus, which is going to show whether you actually have a care at the relationship level, at the emotional level, for the relationship that you're in, for the relationships that you take on. And ultimately I recommend that if you don't have a well-placed moon, if you don't care about these things, just use your power that you have, this sensitivity, this psychological, aesthetic, harmonizing intuition that you have to get all the desires that you want. Just consider that, it's much easier to enjoy life when you're mano a mano with another partner who's really connected to you at a heart and soul level. You probably already know this. You're probably sensitive to this fact as a Cancer sun. And anyway, I digress. That's part of the thing I'm trying to teach in these videos, that Sun and Mars are just different things. And you as a Cancer sun with Mars and Pisces can be soft as the Cancer is, but you can also be hilariously funny. You can be unapologetically real. And the self in one is the self in all. You know how people work. And your sensitivity to how people work with the Mars and Pisces is really going to help you find the domestic reality which you want to manifest as a Cancer sun. So that's all well and good. Ultimately, this is one of the better. It's a great combination because these two are entwined to each other. The Sun being entwined to Mars gives the Cancer, which can be very passive and rather flaky, in order to listen and to show that they're listening to the other person so that they can do the mutual building of trust and security that Cancer wants to do. Sometimes they'll listen so much that they make their own voice not heard. You're special because you're a Cancer who will listen, who will make sure the other person's voice is heard, but you won't let your own voice be sucked out by the wayside. In fact, you'll probably be rolled back with your shoulders back saying, oh, you like that? Well, I like this. What's our mutual thing here, huh? Oh, so that's what you're seeking? Well, this is how I'm used to applying myself towards that direction. And then you can speak to it all confidently. And you hear the other person out and you say, yeah, you hear out what their preferences are or how they like to live life. And you say, yeah, I can dig that. That particular thing, the way you are with that, I don't really agree with it, but it's okay. Just because we have these differences in this regard doesn't mean that we can't get along together. You can speak to these differences and still get along with the person. This is the power of Cancer sun, knowing what you like, listening to what the other person likes, and then delegating it detachedly, but still with the passion and fun of a Mars and Pisces. It's like, oh, you like that, eh? Wow, you're crazy. That's cool. It's still got the bombast. It's not as cold and hard as a Mars in an air or earth sign might be. Again, it also has to do with all the other things in your chart. So it's a great combination. I hope you're seeing why it's great. Before we close here, we're going to do one last little reading. I always like to show the manifest erotic reality of these sign combinations because the erotic always brings these astrological theories to the tangible precipice, shall we say. And, I think it's important to talk a bit about how Sun and Mars express themselves sexually, to see what it is that they mean in relationship with people, and to make it a discerning difference between the outgoing nature of the Sun and Mars versus the real deep relationship values of the Sun mixing all my words today. I'm trying to show a difference between Sun and Mars's outgoing relationship energy versus the Moon and Venus's deeper relationship values. Someday I'm going to do a video series talking about the Sun and Venus, Moon and Venus, rather. And you'll see the difference there. But I digress. This is a reading of erotic astrology. This is Sun in Cancer with Mars and Pisces. What does Mars and Pisces bring to the Cancer ego? With both the Sun and Mars in water signs, you are motivated by your emotions more than your intellect or your body. Although, because water is such a feeling thing, you might find that you work well with people, and you might want to manifest a life with somebody who just aesthetically has the same sense of grace that you do. Because you're so water, conversations for you might be less about what's being said and more about how it's being said. It's that aesthetic level of telecommunication where, earth and air signs don't care about how it's being said. They just can have millions of conversations about facts. And, oh, those facts are useful to me. Oh, I've never thought about those facts. Earth and air kind of converse like that. But fire and water are more just about like the constant enjoyment of different parts of themselves, their personalities, stories, telling things to each other. And it's this shared sense of aesthetic expression that you probably seek in a partner more than what they're saying or what they're talking about, although that's part of it as well, right? For you, lovemaking is more than a mere physical act, but a total intimacy involving your body, your mind, and your soul. There's a sensitivity here combined with a strong will, because the Sun and Mars are trine to each other. So you're sensitive to the other person, but you also have the strong will to get done whatever fun ideas you might have between yourself and the other person. A mutual give and take is important to you in the bedroom and elsewhere. You're somebody who needs to feel at all times that your partner and you have this constant grace. You can't just enjoy it in the bedroom and then walk out to some kind of social party and your partner is putting you down because you didn't use a coaster on the table or something like that. Your ideal partner will come up to you and say, "Darling, just at this party we should put our drinks on our coasters, just so you know." And then they'll go and then they'll leave you alone. Like that's the kind of partner who's, they're not going to like take this as a moment to like, "Oh, you idiot." Like it's like something happened in the bedroom where they, you were the dominant one and they were the submissive one. And then out in the real world, all of a sudden they try to dominate you with something and that comes completely out of nowhere. You don't dig that. You don't deal with that, right? Once involved, you soak up your significant other's feelings and desires like a psychic sponge. Sometimes you have a hard time separating what you're feeling from what you're picking up from your companion. Because the Mars in Pisces ideally expresses itself. You find that you get respected and you do your best skills by listening to the other person. By feeling where the other person was thinking about or going. It's like sexually, if the two of you are doing some kind of thing and your partner, like you've just been working on either their tits or their neck or whatever and all these different parts, and you've been doing all the other things except for let's say one part of their genitals, and you decide after all this time you've been doing all these things and now you start to feel like naturally that this is the one part down here that you haven't been touching and that they might be feeling, and they go, "Oh my God," it's like you're a mind reader, it's that kind of sensitivity that you want to be respected for. And because of this, you're very sensitive to the other person's thing. And sometimes you just have a hard time knowing, like, was that me that thought of that by my own regard, or was I actually picking up what my partner, was it your choice or was it your partner's choice, or was it the one, man? It's part of the fun of being with you, I can definitely assure you. So that's how this Mars gets its kicks, is by being sensitive to others. And this helps naturally, by being in trine with that Cancer sun, it helps to bring the nature of the sun. One thing I wanted to say is that the culture, this Mars in Pisces is in the 9th sign from the sun. In Vedic astrology, we consider that every planet can be a chart unto itself. The Surya chart, the sun chart for you, Mars is in the 9th sign from the sun, which means Pisces represents the culture of, like, the 9th house, the culture of Cancer. And Cancer is the moon, the self, the essential earthy self, the personality. which means this Mars is sensitive to the culture of the self in one, which is the self in all. And so you might have a very good grasp of what people like. And this is something that you should consider as a skill of yours to help you manifest whatever you want, whether it's in business and career, or whether it's putting a juicy smile on your partner's face. You have talent there. I suggest, for your sake and the sake of all those who you serve, to take advantage of it. I hope you guys dug this. I'm Dustin Cormier for How to Rock Astrology. This has been a long video, so I'm going to shut it down here. Thanks for watching. Keep your eyes peeled because I always got more stuff coming out. See you on the next one, folks.